I'm standing here in front of a 2021 Volkswagen ID.4 First Edition. Today we're going to go over how to charge the Volkswagen ID.4. We're going to explain the different levels of electric vehicle charging. We're going to take a look at the charger that comes with the car and let you know if that's adequate or if you need to buy other charging equipment. We're going to also tell you how long it takes to charge the ID.4 on different levels and different equipment of EV charging. We're then going to show you how to use DC fast charging stations. We're going to explain the difference in connectors because there are different connectors in use for DC fast charging. We don't want you ending up at a charging station that you can't plug into. And finally, we're going to show you how you can charge your Volkswagen ID.4 on a Tesla wall connector or one of the thousands of Tesla destination chargers that are installed across North America. But first, make sure to click that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle and electric vehicle charging content here on State of Charge. First thing I'd like to point out is that this is really specific for the North American market. In Europe, there's different charging protocol. They use different connectors, and even the electric supply is different. So charging your ID.4 in Europe is going to be a little different than it is here in North America. For that reason, I want to make sure everybody understands what we'll be talking about today is really specific for North America. Now, the ID.4 has an 82 kilowatt hour battery. Of that, 77 kilowatt hour is usable. Now with all electric vehicles, there's the size of the battery pack that's installed in the vehicle, and then there's the size that the manufacturer allows the customer to access. You never get to use 100% of the battery because they reserve a certain percentage as a buffer. It's not good for batteries to be fully charged and fully discharged. What happens if you do that, they degrade quicker and their life is shorter. You don't want that with your electric car. So Volkswagen has decided to reserve a 5 kilowatt hour buffer from the 82 kilowatt that the battery has kilowatt hour to the 77 kilowatt hour you get to use. That's actually not a very big buffer as far as electric vehicles go. It's not a high percentage of the pack. And when manufacturers choose to reserve a small percentage of the pack, they then usually recommend that the customer doesn't fully charge the battery on a daily basis. And that's just what Volkswagen is doing. You'll notice in the vehicle setting, it recommends that you only charge to 80% during daily charging. Now, with a 250-mile range, it shouldn't be a problem for most people because even if you charge to 80%, you still have about 200 miles of range on a daily basis. And that's fine for most people. Now, on the occasion when you need to go further, you're going on a road trip where you just feel like you might be pushing the limits of your range, it's not a problem to charge to 100%. Volkswagen just recommends you don't do that on a daily basis. Another thing I want to point out is during this video, we're going to be talking about charging equipment and referring to it as chargers. Now, the correct term is actually EVSE, which is electric vehicle supply equipment, because what the chargers do really is just safely supply electricity to your electric vehicle. The actual charger is built into every electric car. It's called an onboard charger. What that does is takes the electricity that is supplied by your EVSE and it converts it to DC. It's going to be receiving it as AC, which is alternating current. And it's going to convert it to DC, which is direct current, because that's how electricity is stored in the battery packs of electric vehicles. So while I'm going to be calling these units chargers, just want to make sure you know the proper term is EVSE. Now, I and many other people in the industry refer to them as chargers because that's what people understand. When you buy an electric vehicle, you don't say, oh, now I have to go out and buy an EVSE. You say, I need to buy a charger for my garage. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that the proper terminology is actually EVSE. The next thing we're going to talk about is the different ways you can charge your ID.4. Basically, there are three types of charging. Level 1 charging, which is from a regular 120 volt household outlet. Any electric vehicle can be charged from a simple household outlet. The only problem is it charges really slowly because it doesn't deliver a lot of power to the car. And in the case of the ID.4, it charges at a rate of somewhere between 2 to 3 miles of range per hour of charging. So if the ID.4 can go about 250 miles per charge, you can do the math. You're not talking about hours, you're talking about how many days will it take to fully charge the car. Since I'm talking about fully charging the car, many people talk and ask a question, they say, well, how long will it take to charge my car? And people quote the time it takes to charge the battery from being empty to full. The problem is, you're almost never going to have an empty battery and need to charge it to full. Very rarely that's going to happen. Your daily charging, you're going to leave with an 80% state of charge battery. Maybe you charge 40 or 50 miles for that day. You drive, you come home and you plug it in. So it really doesn't matter how long it takes to fully recharge the battery. What it matters is how many miles of range per hour are you recovering. So that's why we're going to talk in that term here today. We're going to talk about how many miles of range per hour each type of charging can deliver. And as I mentioned, on a level 1 120 volt charging source, the ID.4 will gain somewhere between 2 to 3 miles of range per hour. It's pretty slow. You can use it in an emergency, but you definitely don't want to be relying on level 1 charging as your daily charging for the ID.4. It has such a big battery, it would just take too long. Most people are going to want to upgrade and get level 2 charging, which is our next type of charging. Level 2 charging is from a 240 volt supply. Appliances in your home like an electric clothes dryer, an electric kitchen range, or an electric water heater, they all use a 240 volt supply. So what the ID.4 will be charging on is something very similar to what you already have in your home for those other electric appliances. So basically, what they do is, all our homes in the US are based on 120 volts. They take 2 circuits and put them together and make 240 volts. And then you can have different power levels on 240 volts. You can have a 16 amp charger, a 32 amp charger, 40 amp charger, or even a 48 amp charger. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But on level 2 charging, the ID.4 can recover as much as 33 to 35 miles of range per hour. Compare that to level 1 charging where it was 2 to 3 miles of range per hour. So now you're talking about being able to get your car charged up pretty quickly at home. Level 2 charging you'll find at home, but you'll also find it in public. There are level 2 charging stations that you can use when you're at shopping centers, movie theaters, all types of destinations. But we're going to also get into public charging a little bit later. But for now, we talked about level 1 charging is 120 volt, level 2 charging 240 volt, and the third type of charging is DC fast charging, sometimes referred to as level 3 charging. That's not the proper term, but if somebody says, oh, I need a level 3 charger, they're talking about DC fast chargers. And DC fast chargers can charge the ID.4 at a rate of up to 7 miles per minute, not per hour, per minute. That's how much faster DC fast charging is than level 1 or level 2. And the ID.4 is equipped with a pretty robust DC fast charging capability. So even compared to other electric vehicles, it's faster than many, and it can fully recharge, well, not fully recharge, it can charge from 10% to 80% in about 38 minutes. So during road trips, you can replenish 200 miles of range in a little bit longer than a half an hour. So you stop, you use the restroom somewhere, grab a cup of coffee, and you're back on your way. Now, most of these DC fast chargers are located in areas, in locations that have food, convenience stores. They're not just out in the middle of nowhere where you have to stand by your car and wait. As whenever possible, the companies that install these put them in areas that have other types of businesses where you can keep yourself busy while the car is charging. And you know what, if you're on a long road trip and you need to go 500 miles, and let's say you need to stop with the ID.4 once in the middle at around 250 mile point, by that time you're going to need to use the facilities and grab a bite to eat anyway. So with the ID.4's 125 kilowatt DC fast charging capabilities, it can be a very competent road tripping car without really experiencing much inconvenience. So next we're going to talk about home charging your ID.4. The ID.4 comes with a 120 volt portable charger. Now this charger here can deliver 10 amps of power at 120 volts, which is a little more than 1 kilowatt. As we mentioned earlier, it's going to really take a long time to charge your ID.4. I plugged it in and checked out exactly how fast it'll charge the ID.4, and the vehicle was telling me that it was charging at a rate of 2 miles of range per hour. So as you can see, it's going to take a really long time, and most people aren't going to use their level 1 charger. Now, believe it or not, some people will. Some people that don't drive very many miles, only drive 20, 30 miles a day, maybe the car's parked in their garage for 23 out of the 24 hours a day, and they can live with a level 1 charger. But most customers, we believe, are going to want to keep this in the car for emergency use and install a proper level 2 charger so they can charge their ID much faster in their garage. Now, examples of level 2 chargers are up here on the wall behind me. I actually review all the popular charging equipment that's available today. So you might want to take a look at this channel, some of my EVSE or charger reviews, and they'll help you decide which equipment is best for you to charge your ID.4. Most home charging equipment today comes available in pluggable units. Now, some of them you can hardwire if you choose, but most people prefer to install a plug, and typically it's the NEMA 1450 that can deliver 40 amps to the car and charge at a rate up to about 9.6 kilowatts. Now, it wouldn't deliver the full power that the ID.4 can accept, which is 11 kilowatts. This Tesla wall connector on the side here can deliver up to 11.5 kilowatts because it's a 48 amp charger. This would be able to fully charge the ID.4 at the top charging speed it can accept, which is 11 kilowatts. But if you notice, it's hardwired. You can't use a plug on a 48 amp charger. They need to be hardwired, so the installation is probably going to cost more, and it will also require thicker wires. You need a number 4 wire, whereas this other equipment that's on the NEMA 1450 outlets requires a number 6 wire. So the installation is going to cost more, and in my opinion, your charging isn't going to be that much quicker. The difference between charging at 40 amps and 48 amps is about 27 miles an hour to about 33 miles an hour. That extra 7 or 6 miles per hour really isn't going to make much of a difference for your daily charging, especially because most people plug in overnight. In a couple of hours, you're fully recharged anyway. So I wouldn't stress out over trying to get the fastest charging rate I can with my ID.4, which is 11 kilowatts. Personally, if I owned an ID.4, I'd probably go for a 40 amp charger and use a NEMA 1450 outlet. Of course, have a qualified electrician do your installation. You don't want to be doing this yourself. Electric vehicle charging has a very high power draw for many hours and every single day of the week. It gets a lot of use. You really want to make sure it's done properly, especially when you consider that a lot of home charging is done overnight while you're sleeping. So if there is a problem, you're not really going to be able to respond to it quickly. Don't mean to scare you. There's very, very few instances where anybody's had a problem with electric car charging, but when there are problems, it's typically centered around somebody who didn't install their outlet properly and they had an issue because of that. So make sure you hire a qualified electrician and have it done correctly. Volkswagen just announced that they're actually going to be selling a level 2 charger for their ID.4 customers through their partner company, Electrify Home. The unit is called the Home Station, and it's a 40 amp smart charger. Now, We don't have that unit yet because they just announced it. It's not available to purchase yet, but as soon as they do, we're going to get one. We're going to do a full review of it here. So depending on when you watch this video, if it's months after we first posted it, you may be able to find that review here on the site, and that's another unit for you to consider. But the one thing I want to stress is you can use a home charger from any company. You don't need the one that Volkswagen recommends or the one that your friend uses for his ID.4. All of the chargers can charge the vehicle just fine, but they do have different features, different cable lengths, different weatherproof rating. Some are Energy Star. Most of them are safety certified, but some are not UL listed. You might want to consider whether or not you want to buy a unit that's not UL listed. So there's a lot of things to consider. That's why we do the comprehensive reviews here on this site. But the one thing you should know is all of the chargers come with this connector. It's called the J1772. Every electric vehicle sold in North America uses this connector for level 1 and level 2 charging, except for Tesla vehicles. Tesla uses their own proprietary connector, but they have an adapter that they put on their connector so they can then charge, or they can put on a J1772, so a J1772 equipped charger can charge their Tesla equipment. But you don't really need to concern yourself with that. You really just need to know any charging equipment you buy from any company will have this connector on it, and it can charge the Volkswagen ID.4. That is the industry standard here for North America. It's one of the differences in Europe. They use a different connector. It's why I said in the beginning of this video that this is North America specific. Now, another thing that we want you to understand about level 2 charging is these chargers all have different power ratings. And the ID.4 can charge at 11 kilowatts, which is a very robust charge rate. It's actually one of the best or fastest charging on level 2 electric vehicles available in North America. But it doesn't mean you have to get a charger that can deliver the full 11 kilowatts. We're going to explain that why in a minute. What I did was I took all of my chargers, I have them at all different power levels, and I plugged them into the ID.4 one at a time to see exactly how many miles of range per hour each charger that delivers different levels of power deliver to the car. It's important for you to understand this because you'll realize, look, I drive 50, 60 miles a day. I can get a charger that charges at this rate, and the car's still going to be fully charged by the morning. If you drive a lot more miles, or if you frequently drive 100 miles during the day and come home and 4 or 5 hours later you want to drive another 100 miles, you might want to get a charger that can deliver a little bit more power. That's why I did this test and plugged them all in so you can see exactly how many miles of range per hour each level of charging will deliver. Now, as I said, the power will change from unit to unit, but from manufacturer to manufacturer, it doesn't make a difference. So if you get a 30 amp charger that's made by Flow, it'll deliver the same amount of power as a 30 amp charger from, say, Bosch or a different company. The amount of power that it delivers really is what's going to dictate how fast your car charges, not the brand of charger that it is. So let's take a quick look at how fast the ID.4 charges with the different level of power being delivered to it. So I plugged in the level 1 charger that Volkswagen supplies with the ID.4, and the car was reporting that it was charging at a rate of 2 miles per hour. See, I told you level 1 is slow. I then plugged in a level 2 charger that can deliver 16 amps or 3.6 kilowatts to the car, and the ID.4 was reporting that it was charging at a rate of 10 miles per hour. When I plugged in a 32 amp unit that can deliver 7.7 kilowatts, the car was reporting 20 miles per hour of range added. I then plugged in a 40 amp unit that can deliver 9.6 kilowatts, and the vehicle was showing 27 miles per hour of range added. When I finally plugged in a 48 amp EVSE, now that can deliver the full 11 kilowatts that the ID.4 can accept, the car was reporting it was charging at a rate of 32 miles per hour. Now that we've got home charging covered, let's talk a little bit about charging your ID.4 on the road. There's level 2 chargers and DC fast chargers out in public. Most of them are going to require some sort of a subscription or membership before you can plug in. Now, in many cases, you can call a 1-800 number that's on the charger and initiate a session, but it's really inconvenient. You want to identify which chargers from which networks you might want to use ahead of time and sign up with those networks, because it really creates a much easier charging experience once you arrive, when you can just plug in, swipe your RFID card, or use your app to begin the charging session. Now, one of the things we need to talk about is, while for level 1 and level 2 charging, all of the electric vehicles other than Tesla use that J1772 connector I showed you. For DC fast charging, it's a little more complicated. There's actually Tesla, what Volkswagen, and pretty much 95% of the other companies use, which is called the CCS, or the combo plug. Then there's another connector called CHAdeMO, and Nissan and Mitsubishi currently use it. The good news is Nissan has agreed to switch from CHAdeMO to the combo plug starting in 2021, and that pretty much dealt a fatal blow to CHAdeMO. It looks like CCS is going to be the standard in North America, and hopefully before too long we won't have to really explain what the different connectors are, because everybody is going to be using CCS outside of Tesla. But for now, you do have to know which DC fast chargers have which connectors. And there's apps out there called Plug&Share and ChargeWay that will help you identify what type of connector the charging station has. You don't want to arrive at a charging station, a DC fast charging station, assuming that you're going to be able to plug in to continue your journey, and find out it has only a CHAdeMO plug. You won't be able to plug in. They don't sell adapters to allow you to charge your combo charging electric vehicle on a CHAdeMO station. The good news is all of the new charging stations that are being installed today have both connectors on them, and you get to select either the CHAdeMO port or the combo port. But there are some older charging stations that are CHAdeMO only. So I definitely recommend download apps like I mentioned, Plug&Share or ChargeWay. And before you visit a public DC fast charging station, just make sure that it has the connector you use. Now, ChargeWay has a unique feature where when you download the app, you enter what type of vehicle you have. You would enter Volkswagen ID.4, and it automatically filters out the plugs you can't use. It won't show you Tesla charging stations or CHAdeMO charging stations. You'll only see the ones that you can use. Plug&Share works a little differently. There's a filter that you have to then say, filter out the CHAdeMO stations and the Tesla stations. I don't need to see those. I can't use them. But I highly recommend you choose one or both of these apps, because I've had so many stories of people on long road trips not realizing until they pulled up to the charging station that, hey, I can't plug in here, and there's not another DC fast charging station within their driving range. So now they're searching to find a level 1 120 volt plug, use their occasional use charger, and now they're there for hours just to make it to the next charging stop. So it's definitely good practice to download the apps, understand the different connectors, make sure you don't end up at the wrong charging station in a very inconvenient time. One DC fast charging network that you're definitely going to want to join is Electrify America. That's because Volkswagen is offering 3 years of unlimited DC fast charging for ID.4 customers. That's right, you can charge for 3 years as many times as you want for free. That's a great perk that Volkswagen is offering for ID.4 customers. Let's talk a little bit about the DC fast charging process. I mentioned earlier that the ID.4 can accept up to 125 kilowatts of power from a DC fast charger. That's some good power, and it charges very quickly. The thing you need to understand is charging on a DC fast charger, the power draw isn't linear. Now, what I mean by that is on a level 2 charger, let's say you buy a 40 amp level 2 home charger that can deliver 9.6 kilowatts. When you plug the vehicle in, it's going to immediately ramp up to 9.6 kilowatts, and it's going to hold that charge rate for nearly the entire charging session. Once it gets up close to 100%, like 98, 99%, the charge rate's going to slowly taper down. That's because as batteries get near to 100% full, the charger or the vehicle actually has to balance the cells because all of the battery cells don't have the exact same state of charge. So the charge rate slows down dramatically so the battery management system can slowly charge all the cells so they're all the exact same state of charge. Now with DC fast charging, it doesn't hold that constant rate the entire time till it gets to like 99% charged. The charging curves are much different. And this happens for all electric vehicles, not just the ID.4. While it can accept 125 kilowatts, it only accepts that at a very low state of charge when the battery is like empty. And it'll only continue to charge at 125 kilowatts till the battery is about 30% full. Then it starts to slowly ramp down its charging speed. By the time you get to 80%, the ID.4 is barely accepting over 50 kilowatts. And that's one of the reasons why people recommend that you don't charge on a DC fast charger all the way up to 100%. It's not to save the battery, and it's not because, as we mentioned earlier, the Volkswagen doesn't recommend you charge to 100%. It's because that from 80% to 100%, the car charges very slowly. As a matter of fact, it may take longer. I haven't timed it yet, but it's probably close. It may take longer to charge the ID.4 from 80% to 100% on a DC fast charger than it does to charge it from 0 to 80%. That's how much of a difference it makes. So when you're on a long road trip, unless you absolutely need that extra 20% of range to make it to your destination or to the next DC fast charger, set the car to shut off at 80%. It absolutely is a waste of time if you sit at a DC fast charger longer than 80% unless you absolutely need the range. And speaking of that, I did a full DC fast charge test on the ID.4. I charged it from 2% to 90% in about 47 minutes. But the 2% to 80% was 38 minutes, which is exactly what Volkswagen promised. So in a little more than a half an hour, if the battery is nearly empty, you can be at 80%, which gives you your 200 miles of range to continue your journey. In order to plug in the combo connector, you have to remove a plastic cap that exposes the two DC fast charge pins. Volkswagen also included this little tab under the charge port door so you can store that cap so it's not dangling while you're DC fast charging. So I told you earlier I would explain how you can charge your ID.4 on a Tesla charging station. Tesla has 4 different types of charging stations. They have their mobile connector that comes with the vehicle. It's a level 1, level 2 charging station that can deliver up to 32 amps and charge Tesla vehicles pretty robustly. Tesla actually offers better standard charging equipment than what Volkswagen does. That portable 120 volt level 1 charging cord really isn't a great unit to come with the car. Many other manufacturers include a level 2 unit standard. It's something that we think Volkswagen ought to consider doing in the future. So you can use the mobile connector from Tesla. You could use the wall connector, which I have installed in my garage, and you could also use Tesla destination chargers, which are a version of the wall connector that Tesla installs at destinations across North America. They literally have thousands of them installed at hotels, bed and breakfasts, wineries, amusement parks, all different types of destinations, so when their customers arrive, they can plug in and charge their electric car while they're at that facility. However, as I mentioned, Tesla uses a different connector for level 1 and level 2 charging, so you wouldn't just be able to plug the connector in and charge your car. You need an adapter. So let's take a look. Here's the Tesla connector. As you can see, it's much smaller and more sleek than the J1772 connector that all the other electric vehicles, including the ID.4, uses. So in order to be able to charge your ID.4 on a Tesla charging station, you need to have an adapter. I have two of the adapters here. These are from a company called Tesla Tap. And I'm also including links to these products in the description of this video. If any of the people that watching this video would like to buy them, you can buy it directly from that link there. Now I should note, I do earn a very small commission from that, but it does make it very easy. You just click the link and you can go and purchase the equipment. And I also think it's important that you click that link, not just for my commission, but it's so that you don't buy the wrong one, because these are available in different power levels. We're going to talk about that in a second, but you have to make sure you get the right power level. And I'm going to include the links to the ones that are what I recommend, because they do provide safe charging for the ID.4. So what you basically would do, both of these have the same type of connection where the Tesla connector locks into the charger, to the adapter, and then this plugs into your ID.4. Now, this is called the Tesla Tap. This is called the Tesla Tap Mini. This is a brand new product. Obviously, it's smaller, lighter, it takes up less space, but it does cost more. This plugs in, it locks in, and if you notice, there's a little hole at the bottom and on the top. I don't know if you can see that. Same with here. You could put a little lock in there so nobody can steal your adapter. You want to make sure that nobody unplugs and steals it. Now, the ID.4 does lock the connector to the car, so that should provide that level of safety, but it can't hurt to put the little lock on there in case you leave your doors unlocked, because if the vehicle is if the ID.4 is unlocked, the connector can be released. Once you plug in and the vehicle is locked, it locks it to the car. But it's just an extra layer of safety. You don't want somebody making off with an adapter that costs you a couple $100. Now getting to the price point, or power level is what I meant. I recommend Tesla Tap because they make these adapters that are high powered. There are some other ones available on Amazon that have a maximum charge rating of 40 amps. And some of them list 40 amps, and they actually really should only be delivering 32 amps, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm just going to talk about Tesla Tap that actually makes good high quality products. The fact that the ID.4 can accept up to 11 kilowatts, that's 48 amps. And a Tesla wall connector or a Tesla destination charger can deliver 48 amps. You don't want the car and the charger both communicating and saying, okay, I can deliver 48 amps. How much power do you want? The ID.4 then says, oh, great, I can accept 48 amps. Give me the full 48 amps. I want to charge at 11 kilowatts. So now you have the charger delivering 11 kilowatts, and you have an adapter in the middle that's only rated to accept 7.7 kilowatts. That can happen if you buy a less expensive one that doesn't have the proper rating. Tesla Tap sells these in all different amperage, 40 amps, 60 amp, even up to 80 amps. This Tesla Tap Mini I have here is also available in a 60 amp version. I recommend, if you're going to get an adapter like this to charge on Tesla charging stations, and I don't care if you buy it from Tesla Tap or somebody else, but I urge you to buy one that is rated at least 50 amps. A 50 amp unit is fine, 60 amp, 80 amp, but get one that's at least 50 amps. Otherwise, you're going to have a situation where the adapter in the middle cannot accept the power that's being delivered to it. Bad things can happen there, and you can even end up damaging your car, besides the fact that you'll probably damage the charger or maybe have a fire in the adapter. It might melt. Somebody could get hurt. So if you're going to buy an adapter to charge on a Tesla destination charger or wall connector, make sure it's rated at least 50 amps. Now, I didn't mention the fourth type of Tesla charger yet, and that's Tesla Superchargers. And that's something that every electric vehicle owner would love to be able to charge on his Tesla Supercharger network. Unfortunately, even with an adapter, you cannot charge on a Tesla Supercharger. Tesla Superchargers use an authentication process where when you plug your vehicle in, it communicates with the car. The car has to respond, yes, I'm a Tesla, VIN number, whatever. It's okay to charge here. You can make adapters where you could physically plug the car in, but it will not charge. So unfortunately, you cannot use your ID.4 to charge at a Tesla Supercharger, but you can use their destination chargers. And as I said, there's thousands of them all over North America, very convenient, and they're high powered. They deliver 11 kilowatts. So if you're gonna get one of these adapters, please make sure it's rated at least 50 amps. And the last thing I wanna say is always ask permission when you plug into a Tesla destination charger. These, as I said, are installed in bed and breakfasts, in hotels, and it's on their property. Tesla doesn't own the stations. The property owner does. So you never want to charge on someone's property without asking permission first. There's a couple more things I'd like to mention before we wrap things up here today. If you'd like to schedule charging for your ID.4, say for instance, if you have a time of use electricity plan where you pay less for your electricity when you charge during off-peak hours, you need to do that through the Volkswagen CarNet app. So you definitely want to download the CarNet app, and you could also use it to remotely lock and unlock the car and other features. But as far as charging goes, you definitely want to use that if you have any type of time of use or you just want to schedule your ID.4's charging. You could also use the app to precondition the cabin, and also if the ambient temperatures are low enough, precondition the battery so that it warms up a little bit before you head out, and that'll help increase your range. Then there's the auto unlock cable feature that you can enable in the settings. When you plug a level 2 charger into your ID.4, it automatically locks to the car. The car, little pin comes out above the charging connector and it locks it to the car so nobody can unplug you. Now, it's going to remain locked until you unlock your doors. If you use the unlock on your key fob, the charger connector releases and you can unplug it. But let's say it's parked out in public somewhere and you're using a public level 2 charger and it finishes charging. It's going to remain locked to the car, the connector will, and nobody else could use that charging station. Let's say you're at a workplace environment where people share a charger, or even if you're charging out in public somewhere in a parking lot, a shopping center. Once your car's finished charging, you want to be able to allow somebody else to use that charger. And I mean, best practices is for you to come back and unplug it, but let's say you can't do that for whatever reason. You can enable the auto unlock feature, and what'll happen is once the vehicle is 100% charged and shuts off, the connector will unlock, and then somebody else can take it and use it to charge their electric vehicle. Another feature that the ID.4 has is the ID light, which is an LED light strip that is at the base of the windshield. Basically, when you're charging, it will illuminate a solid color for the portion of the battery that's already charged. Let's say the battery was 50% charged. Half of the light bar would be a solid color, and the other half would be sort of like a blinking or scrolling LED light. And as the car continues to charge, it becomes solid all the way. Once it's completely charged, the bar is a solid color and charging shuts off. The ID.4 is going to launch without a feature called Plug&Charge. We talked a little bit earlier about DC fast charging and how you need to use an app or an RFID card to initialize a charging session on a public DC fast charger. But there's a new technology out now called Plug&Charge. And what it does is it automatically authenticates the car and bills a pre-established account upon plugging in. So you don't have to use an app or an RFID card. Basically, if your car was Plug&Charge enabled and the charging station could also communicate and Plug&Charge, what you do is pull up to the station, just grab the connector, plug it in, and walk away. There's going to be a communication process. The station's going to say, okay, your ID.4 belonging to John Smith, and it will automatically bill your account. Now, in the case with Electrify America and Volkswagen, it won't bill you anything for 3 years because it's unlimited charging, but it will at least establish the fact that you are allowed to charge there for free, and it'll begin the charging session without you having to pull out your app or do anything like that. Now, I spoke to Volkswagen representatives and really asked them why it wasn't enabled at the vehicle's launch, and they assured me that very soon, within the next few months, or definitely before the end of 2021, there's going to be an over-the-air software update, and it's going to enable plug-and-charge feature. So the Volkswagen ID.4 will have plug-and-charge. Currently, the Electrify America network has it enabled on all of their DC fast chargers. The EVgo network has a pilot program going out where some of their chargers are enabled, so that's going to be coming soon. But within the next few years, we expect that it's going to be commonplace that the charging stations are going to have plug-and-charge technology built into them. And if your car is plug-and-charged enabled, all you're going to have to do is roll up, plug in the charger, and walk away. It'll do all the communication, it'll bill your account, and you won't have to fumble with apps or RFID cards or anything like that. Now, I just completed a 2% to 80% DC fast charge test with the ID.4. I'm going to put the link to that video in the description of this video for those that are interested in seeing how long the ID.4 takes to charge from 2% to 80%. I'll tell you right now, it did it in 38 minutes, and it actually is a pretty good DC fast charging electric vehicle. I think I mentioned that earlier, but the video will allow you to see exactly how fast it's charging at what state of charge, because as I mentioned, DC fast charging rates aren't linear, but here you can really get a good picture of exactly how fast the car's charging at each level, each state of charge level. The ID.4 also has an option in the settings that is reduced AC charging current. If you check that setting, the car is going to derate the charging to only 8 amps. Now, why would you want to enable that? Well, in some instances, you may be on a circuit that is an older circuit. It's an older outlet that you're not really sure it's safe to draw a lot of current for. So people like to put it on a low setting so it doesn't overload the circuit. There's uses for this if you know you're going to be plugged in for a super long time. I actually, at one point last year, visited a bed and breakfast. I was there for a weekend, and I didn't need to use my car while I was on the property. And they allowed me to plug into a simple 120 volt outlet. Now, I was going to be there for 2 days, so I set the reduced charge setting in my car so it charged nice and slowly and plugged into a regular 120 volt outlet that they had outside of their garage. I did that because I didn't want to overload the circuit. I knew I was going to be there long, and it really didn't matter. I didn't have to charge quickly. So while that might not be a feature you use often, it is in the settings, and if there's a reason for you to have to lower the amount of draw that the car takes in, you could check that box and it'll help you avoid possibly overloading a circuit. So that's it for the Volkswagen ID.4, everything you need to know about charging video. We hope you learned some things here today. One thing I'd like to note is we intentionally go slow with these how-to charging videos under the premise that there is many people that are going to be transitioning to electric vehicles, and it's going to be their first electric car. So I may have been repetitive, I may have gone slowly over some features, but it's really for the people that are at ground zero and don't understand anything about electric car charging. So I hope I didn't go at too slow of a pace for those that already have electric cars and kind of already understand how this whole thing works. If we didn't cover anything, if you have any other questions, leave them in the comment section below. And don't forget, click that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming EV and EV charging videos here on State of Charge. Thanks for watching.